Look at this huge box, bud. I put you on it for scale, along with a tin of Altoids. What could be inside this box? Oh, it's the Anycubic Kobra Max 3D printer. This is gonna be a big one. Gratuitous animal shots? What is this, retro recipes? Hello, Chip Tippers, and welcome to Retro Recipes. This box is huge, it's like 29 by 31 inches. Holy mackerel, that is one big build platform. I wonder what kind of surface it is. It looks more like the Anycubic Mega Pro. Oh, this is a big printer. How does this... There we go. Come on, happy little clouds. All right, let's put you over here. One thing I've noticed, I haven't found an instruction sheet yet. You know, like, this is the order in which to unpack it or something. So if it's like the other ones, this is probably going to be loose. It is, in America units, 16 by 16 inches. So yeah. What would that be in millimeters? Probably like 400? I don't know. Wow, according to the NSA Pringles can, it's 406 millimeters. Wow, that was a pretty good guess for an American bacon trucks. I actually thought about buying a truck last week, but then I didn't because the prices are insane. All right, so I'm gonna pull this straight out and set it aside someplace. This just made me think about that episode of The Office where they get the box from Sabre and they think it says Sabre, and then everyone starts ripping into the box. It's like, ooh, a printer, a scanner, and then they find out it's for the new guy, and they try to put it back in the box. You know they're going to eventually reboot Office, right? When they reboot The Office, it's just not going to hold up as well as it used to. That's what she said. Bud, you'll have another box to jump in. So much cardboard in the world. I wish there was a better way to recycle it. Cardboard is one of those, like plastic, not really as recyclable as I'd like you to believe. Well, it looks like they have two Y drive motors for this direction. Yep. Oh no, oh no! It's two belts, but one big stepper. See that? Right there. And Bud immediately jumped into the box. This must be the front because they have these caps here. Micro SD card slot, USB, and then see how this extrusion isn't capped off? That's because that's where you'll put the screen. I wonder how this is supposed to work. It's a piece of borosilicate glass and it has a texture on it like the Mega Pro, but I guess you use clips on the end? Oh wait, there's a Dan Brown-esque hidden compartment. Nice! Oh good, the printer comes with tie rods. Oh, here we go. Anycubic Kobra Max. Assembly instructions. Oh, there's the clips for the bed. Oh, those things that I call tie rods. It looks like they're supports for the frame. So much like a TV antenna. I mean, like a broadcaster antenna. Other than that, it looks like it assembles pretty much the same way as the other one, just larger. I think I'm going to install these guy braces first because they might help me properly attach the main frame since I don't have anyone here to help me. Just a cat. Doesn't even have a proper opposable thumb. Yeah, this is a big one. Maybe I could take this to Murph. That's my impression of, what's that actor's name? Matthew McConaughey. Looks like they've got some slits up here for a little bit of slippage. So let's see. Let's do the bolt and the washer and a lock nut. Yeah, they included a little flat wrench to use on the lock nuts. That was nice of them. Oh, that's different from last time. There's actually a groove in this extrusion that this extrusion fits into. I guess that helps you line it up. It looks like these are meant to be adjustable. See how there's nuts here? So I think I should actually loosen these up as much as I can so there's enough slop for this beam to pull straight, or perpendicular I should say. So there's two front feet right here, as well as, well, there's four feet in the front and two of them are kind of in the middle. which is handy, but there aren't 2 feet in the back. And the reason why that is probably not super great is because, see, if I just pull it off the table like this, see how it sags on the left because there's no feet? I can cram in like a tape measure. 2 center feet in the back would have made this step a little easier. And let's get the other side. Come on, there we go. Tighten the top and bottom nuts on the rod. Oh, there's a wrench for that too. Well, that's nice. There's 2 cable bundles here. They have different header widths. I'm sure one goes to this module, another one goes to the extruder. It would have been nice if these were labeled, but it doesn't look like they are. Not a huge deal. I mean, it's still pretty easy to figure out how everything goes together. Like this is, yeah, all right, so that's for the motors. And I'll probably need some cable management, of course. And then this one would go into the extruder head. Okay, I'm going to put these clamps in place. It says there's 6 of them. It's showing 3 in the front and 3 in the back, but I'm going to see if I can fit 2 on the side. Printable area is smaller than the outside of the bed, so it probably is about 16 square inches. Well, actually, it's probably 16 cubic inches. I kind of wonder if this is AC. See, well, stands to reason. The larger the bed, the more power it takes, but I think there's a certain point where you might be better off using AC to heat the bed. It would be a lot more efficient. I don't know if this one does it. It's not super common, but I have seen printers that do it. Usually at like Murph. But I'm going to rename you Murph. Big, giant Lord of the Zip Ties. Holding that in place. This looks like they have it on some foam. Man, they really don't want that to move in shipping. I mean, I guess that's good. There we go. So let's move this to its extremity. And then we'll clamp this here. Oh, I think we're actually supposed to use these to attach it to the tube as well. Wait, now this is weird. This is like wobbling. Wonder if that's something we have to readjust since it had that foam under it. That's a bit how you doing. So apparently this is an eccentric bolt, which means the hole is not centered, which when you tighten it allows you to, well, when you rotate it, it causes it to scrunch up and tighten. Okay, the wobble stopped, but of course I also don't want it to be too loose. Well, these red knobs are belt tensioners, so I guess I'll make sure these are tight as well. Feels pretty good. All right, let's switch it on. It's the Anycubic theme song. All right, I believe this has the same bed leveling, automatic bed leveling as the Viper. Let's see here. Okay, prepare, leveling, auto leveling. Use a tool to touch printer nozzle. Okay. Clunk. All right, leveling is starting. Boy, did you make a movie mistake. I've tried to move it with some of the zip ties still on the Z. Oops. Okay, it is going to warm up the nozzle first. For whatever reason. I don't have any filament loaded yet, but I'll do that next. All right, looks like it's doing a multi-point leveling. It's going to create a mesh. So if there are inaccuracies in the Z height of the table, the software, or the firmware here, will accommodate for that as a G-code is sent over. So it's created a mesh that will be inside of its own firmware. Well, actually, let's load some filament first. So let's go to Prepare, Filament, Filament in. It should be pretty much up to the temperature. All right, so I'm going to put the filament through the filament sensor. Put it into the extruder. Again, this is exactly like the Viper. I'm just going to manually open up the drive gear. Feed it all the way through to the head. 190 should be hot enough to extrude PLA. Surprised I'm not there yet. Oh, there we go. All right. Well, I guess we could start that all and just see how big it is. Make sure it's not too big of a file. I mean, obviously this is meant to print gigantic things, but obviously we want to test it first. Is it doing a skirt? What exactly is it doing? It's like a mega skirt. It looks like the plastic stuck pretty much on the first try. Oh wait, is this owl? Howl? A hollow owl? Howl? Owl? Superb owl? Yeah, it looks like that was some sort of skirt or raft or something, because now it's printing... It looks like the owl's feet in the center of it. Well, I guess if we could just let this run. Okay, I think I'll just let this run and we'll see how the owl turns out. Well, I made another movie mistake. I heard some squeaking. I realized that these straps were still underneath, holding the y-axis in place, although it still was able to move. So I paused the print, cut them, and removed them. So the instructions did say to do that, and I missed it. So that's on me. Well, we can try and see how noticeable the pause layer is after the print is done. Kind of like using the rings on a tree to figure out when there was a drought. So as I'm filming this printer hasn't been announced yet. I'm wondering if there's any files on the SD card that came with it that could help me set it up with a slicer program. So I'd like to print something like large, like a big circle or something. Yeah, but I have to make sure I have the right profile. I mean, I guess I could probably do one by scratch, but I'll take a look in the SD card, see if there's anything. Unless you're printing really large things, you're spending a lot of energy heating up this whole bed for basically nothing. It's kind of too bad they don't have like zones or something. I know that would probably take more software, but like some of the newer TVs do that. Like not the OLEDs, but like the quantum dots. They'll have multiple sections of backlight and they'll only light up the section that needs to be lit up. I mean, they do that for better black levels, but for something like this, maybe they could do it to keep the heat more centralized. Oh, 500 watts. That's a decent amount. So this thing's kind of like running half of a microwave. And I guarantee you 90% of that is going into the bed. We see the owl in its own environment, half printed, its claws firmly grasped upon the husk of a log. It might be hard to see where the pause layer was because the file itself actually has like kind of like some lines built into the log. I'll take a look at that SD card. I think I still have Cura installed on the computer downstairs, so if I'm guessing if it's anything like the Viper, the profiles are probably in Cura, so maybe I can set it up there and then I can send some files over, put them on the SD card, and then we can like print like a big circle or something. Hey, you can like print an Iron Man helmet on this. Or Boba Fett. Book of Mos Fett. But are you gonna jump in the donation box? And then I can donate you as well? Hackerspace obviously needs a cat. Yeah, you have all sorts of people to annoy instead of just me. What do you think? Okay, the owl is done. Let's see. Tools, move axes, 10 millimeters. It's on there pretty good. Did they include, oh, they didn't include a metal spatula with this one. There's a plastic spatula. And you know where you can buy a plastic spatula at? Took 2 hours and 15 minutes. Looks pretty good. I don't even think you can really see the layer issue or where I paused it. I think I might need to let it cool a little bit before it'll pop off easily, especially with this flat portion here. In the interim, we can see that the drive assembly on this is pretty much identical to the Anycubic Viper. So this is just another misspelled type of snake because it's the KOBRA. Has the same touch sensor. Of course, this plate's a little bit different. I also noticed this one only has a Z homing switch on one side versus two sides on the Viper. Maybe it was unnecessary to have two of them on the Viper. But yeah, seems to work out of the box pretty much straight away. So on the same sticker that told us the wattage, it says this is 400 by 400 by 450 millimeters volume. So roughly 16 by 16 by 18 America units. Yeah, that's a pretty big build platform. If I had to guess, my electric is probably like 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So you'd be looking at roughly 7 cents an hour to run this thing. Shouldn't be a shock, but this bed is holding a lot of heat a lot longer than you'd normally expect it to. Yeah, granted it has more surface area that heat can sink out of. However, it's also got a lot of mass that can store the heat. So I think right now the mass is winning. Yeah, this has the same texture as the Mega Pro that I looked at. See, it looks kind of like a bunch of like laser etched dots, but it's, I would assume it's borosilicate glass. I never really had a, I mean, it seemed to work well on the Mega Pro. Oh, maybe that's called a brim? Is that what they call that kind of print? I don't know. I'm not a 3D printer expert. That's like, who's that guy? 3D nerd? 3D printing nerd, Joel Telling. Or Maker's Muse, or Thomas Salamander. I tried bargaining with you peacefully, but you have elected the path of pain. Okay, if the glass bed shatters spectacularly, I promise to leave it in the video. That's one smooth-backed owl. Actually, I can't even really see where the pause layer was. Yeah, let's just remove this. Look into my eyes, Hypnotoad. Oh, that's right, Futurama's coming back. Nice. I remember in the olden days, there was this big thing where there'd be printers without heated beds. And they'd be like, oh, well, you have to do this with PLA only. I think the Replicator 2 was like that. Yeah, it was. But now it seems like nobody uses ABS anymore, but everyone uses a heated bed. I wonder if this is using the new drivers. It sounds pretty quiet, although I could hear some math when it was making that skirt. Hear that? Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I would hope this thing has the new 32-bit microcontroller. Maybe they couldn't find any. Although the old AT Megas are getting hard to find now, too. This is printing at 80 millimeters a second. I would think that it could go higher. Although with a larger frame like this, you'd probably want to not go too crazy to avoid backlash. No, bud, don't even think about doing what you're thinking about doing. I know what you're thinking about doing. In the immortal words of Shania Twain. Whatever you do, don't. It should speed up once it gets past the first layer. This is a very large build volume. I could print my own trash can. Oh, I should have set it to 0 infill. It's shaking the table like Jurassic Park. His vision's based off movement. Oh, and coincidentally, there's a Steven Spielberg Selectavision movie in the background. Yeah, I should have done this like vase mode. Yeah, you see one of these Selectavision? This was meant to be a cheaper version of Laserdisc. Yeah, it's like you stick the whole thing into the player, and then you, the user, you pull out the sleeve, and it drops this record in the caddy into the player. So this is, it's a movie stored as capacitance based off the thickness of the plastic. And the gag was it could be, the discs could be pressed with the same machinery that made records. So the idea was to make it much cheaper than a Laserdisc. It never caught on because it had a lot of limitations. Technology Connections has great videos about it, so you should watch him. Well, don't click away right now. Continue watching this video and then go watch somebody else. Perhaps I should attempt my first very large print with this printer. I could print like an Iron Man helmet or something. I would think filament management would be really important. Like you'd want a really nicely wound spool like this one appears to be. I guess that's the thing, like can you get a wider spool, but then there's a wider spool fit on this holder? Or, I mean thicker or a larger diameter, but then you might hit this motor. How much plastic would like an Iron Man helmet take? I guess I could use Kira or Simplify to figure it out. That'll tell you the filament. Yeah, because this is sold by weight, but what is the distance? Well, I stopped the print, but for some reason it's going back to 00000. Okay, let's go up with the Z. Forward with the Y. The main thing I was curious about this was how well it sticks with a lukewarm bed. Came off pretty easily. Maybe I should have had the bed temperature a little higher. I'm going to try printing one of the things that I use for my single-handed controllers. The Kira profile I used, the ending script, obviously needs some work because why doesn't it put the platform forward for the user to grab instead of back? Alright, well, here's the piece. It's supposed to interface with this from another printer. Let's see how well it does. And it's a little interference. Probably just needs a little bit of cleanup. I used the X-Acto knife to round out these edges here, and now it fits just fine. So that's fairly normal. This is for my D-pads, for my single-handed controllers. I think I'd rather use a printer like this to print out a bunch of small things in one shot than to print something very tall. Although there would probably be occasions where I need to print something very large. For my work, I don't usually have to do that, but Actually, for that, what was that thing called? The CyberDeck thing that uses CRT? Whatever I end up building for that, probably some sort of 8-bit computer. I mean, this might be really good for building. Maybe I couldn't build the whole case in one shot, but I could probably build in like 2 shots. Yeah, I'm gonna make a new file. I'm gonna put a bunch of small objects and scatter them around the playfield and see how they hold up. Seems like it's laying down the first layers pretty quickly. You know, the first layers are the most important part. The vibe I'm getting off of this printer, I think this would be a good choice for someone that likes printing like Iron Man suits. There's actually a really huge Nerf modding community in the world, and 3D printers have been like a magic bullet for those guys, or a magic sponge bullet for those guys, because they'll take a Nerf gun and they'll reprint half of it and make like a super Nerf gun. So something like this would be great for that community because you could print very large pieces on this. For myself, I usually print small things like, you know, like accessibility controller parts. Occasionally I make like a portable video game console case. So something like this probably wouldn't be the first choice for me. I think you definitely want to look at your needs, like what are the size of parts you want to print. You might think, oh, this thing is huge, I could do everything on it. But I think there is a case to be made for a printer possibly being larger than you need because of the price, because of the footprint, and let's be honest, because of the energy consumption of this large heated bed. For size comparisons, here is the Anycubic Mega Pro. This is a pretty standard size printer, and look how much smaller it is. It's like a little baby printer. Like, I think you could probably fit this printer in the other printer. You almost could. Look at that. Remember, the slicing profile will print the first layer at about half the speed, and usually it also will print it slightly squished. So if you're printing something at 0.3 millimeter layer height, it'll print the first layer at 0.2. So point being, this should speed up once it gets to the second layer, although it's running pretty fast as is. And also the part cooling fan should kick on. Yep, there it goes. So it's going to be on the side here. So the part cooling fan pulls in air and blows onto the part to help it cool quickly. It doesn't do that on the first layer. It turns on the second layer. That's why you heard it turn on just now. So it's probably going closer. Well, you can set a maximum speed, like, oh, the maximum print speed is 120 millimeters a second. But how fast it actually prints is usually less than that. Like a curve is going to obviously take longer. The first layer, it's going to have a reduction. It'll print like the walls faster than it will on the inside. So like the 120 is like a best case scenario speed. All right, the print finished, but it looks like the top layer didn't really print that well. Like, it didn't print solid. Maybe I reduced the number of top layers in Cura too much. Let's try one on the side here. Yeah, there's the textured pattern. I printed a smaller batch. I can still see the stair stepping in this print, although that's because there's a slope down the middle and then it comes up on the side. I think I'll try the same print again, but at 0.1 layer height. All right, I'm now using this printer to print something fairly large. This is pieces to create a pinball machine ramp. This is for my new game. Hopefully it's somewhat obfuscated what the ramp looks like. But yeah, this is the perfect opportunity because the last time I printed this, I had to print it in like 5 or 6 pieces, and this one will be 4. And also the ramp is bigger than it was the previous time I printed it. So we can have really long contiguous sections like right there. I think that's about 15 inches. Yeah, so this is going to take about 11 hours to print, so I guess we'll catch up with you around midnight. All right, so we'll see how they turn out, and then we'll glue them together, and should be pretty cool. So this ramp, when it's actually in a game, it'll be vacuum formed from a CNC milled aluminum mold. But in this case, we have to put in a lot of supports, because obviously there aren't a lot of like flat sections, so that's adding a lot of print time. Nice. It's quite easy to remove. Yeah, Kira printed that pretty much flat. There's just support on the sides here for this lip. And you don't need the lip. The lip just simulates how the final part will be actually vacuum formed. It did take 7 hours, which kind of seems, that feels like a long time to me. Although maybe because the prints are so large, you know, in the XY, it just, well, of course it's going to take longer. And here's the final ramp piece. I probably finished printing around 1 a.m. Bud, are you hiding under there? I could hide out under there. I just made you say underwear. Yeah, reviewing this printer came along at the right time because I needed to print some large things that would not have fit in my other printers. I still think the default profile in Cura that they provided with this is, it seems a bit slow. It seems like this thing should run faster, especially with those modern TMC drivers. However, I'm just basically, you know, reviewing the printer as I see it out of the box, but I would say for me that seems like it's a flaw. I think once you get up to this size of a bed, you should really look at an AC solution, because it's a much more efficient way of heating something. All right, we've got this large ring. Oh, that just came right off with no effort whatsoever. Guess the table's all cool. Yeah, this is for a prop for a music video that I'm helping Max with. Yeah, so I wouldn't have been able to print that without this large printer. So that's cool. It took like 5 hours though. It still seems like a long time. Kind of looks like a big cursive O, doesn't it? Okay, this is a very large project that I printed using the KOBRA MAX. It's kind of hard to explain. It's for a music video that a friend of mine is working on. So I was able to print these large skins and some interfaces on the inside. So someone's going to wear this on their head for the music video. But yeah, I was able to do this because of the KOBRA MAX printer. So yeah, that was pretty fortuitous that, you know, I was reviewing it at the same time I had this project come up. So very handy. All right, another large object has been printed with the Max. This took about 13 hours. Okay, so I'm going to manually move the table, but I'm doing it very slowly because I don't want to induce a current and backfeed it. Now this was printed with a brim. I almost said skirt, but no, this is a brim. I noticed it's pretty much required on something large like this because as the oh, I guess it came loose. But as the print head goes around on like these large areas, it can cause some friction, and then obviously, you know, you've got, you know, kind of like a lever going on. So if you have some friction here, it's accentuated down here. So by printing this brim, it ensures that there's a higher surface area to make sure that it sticks. Right around here seems to be a less effective spot, because I was printing something before this and I had it like this and I had some lifting here. So I would say that does seem to be a negative with this printer and this large build platform, is I am not seeing completely consistent heat on the bed. Maybe I could try re-zening it again, like the Z mesh level. I would like to see these printers run faster. And even when I put, if I put like 120 millimeters a second into Cura, it seems like it knocks it down to about 80. So I believe there's a hard limit in the firmware itself. Although, even though I'm talking about negatives with this, and obviously Anycubic sent this to me to review, serendipitously, there was actually 2 different projects that came up in like the last month that required very large prints, and without this printer, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So yeah, if you're into like Nerf gun modding or cosplay, making cat armor, or if you just need to prototype very large prints, I think this would be a pretty good machine. I just wish it was a little faster. The main character has a flower pot for a head, so I just call it pot head. So it's a flower pot, but it has to be something that you can like put over a human head, because you can't really fit your head through the bottom of it. So I printed these 2 pieces using the Anycubic Kobra Max, and then I've got like these rotating linkages inside of it. But what you do is after you put this over the person's head, there's something that connects the top of it, but then to seal the seams of it, right, so you put the halves together like this, then you'd put the top linkage in, and then once that's in place, come in here with your big trusty screwdriver and lock it like that. And what I'll do is I'll put some non-drying oily clay at the top and the bottom to kind of help this stick in place. And the idea is this will prevent it from opening in this direction, or at least keeping the seams down the side as straight as possible. Oh no, here comes danger. I'm putting on my Iron Man suit. A whole bunch of gears and cogs and sprockets are engaging to put the suit together around me, even though doing this requires more motors and gears than the suit itself actually needs. See, the first movie, when he had like automated machinery, like a car factory putting the suit on, that made sense. Or even like in the first Avengers movie where he's got like that conveyor belt that takes off a suit. And it's cool the suit can put itself on, but yeah, you would think the suit would be like 99% motors if that was real. What a bunch of BS. Cool. See, if I wanted to be really fancy, I could have done this with like servos. I'd be like, yeah, just in case you need to become, oh no, it's Thanos. I've got to become a flower pot headman. You like it? It's nano machines. Also stupid. Just because, oh, they're nano machines, which means they must be very small. They don't have any mass. And since they're very small, they can fit inside this necklace. See also Black Panther? No! They still have mass. So even if they're very small, like grains of sand, it still adds up the mass. Unless they're really, really, really small, which means Iron Man's nano suit would have like what? Like 3 atoms of thickness to it? Whatever, it's a movie. That's the thing. The first Iron Man had pretty realistic engineering in it, all things considered. Like when he comes back and he's like, I designed this to come apart. And it won't come apart because it's been hit by missiles. That's realistic. Are you trying to jump up and damage some stuff? Are you being bad? I'm printing a very wide piece for my costume project. I think this is the largest XY piece that I've printed on this printer so far. Let's see how it does. I actually put some glue stick down around the edges just to make sure, and then we've also got a brim that's been printed. So, oh yeah, look at this big piece. Wow, you could almost print the rim for a Geo Metro on this thing. Remember those things? Now I have to print the outer piece. Whoa, look at this piece. It took up almost the entire volume. This is also for my pot appliance. So let's see how big this is. Oh, yeah, it fits nicely. Okay, so printer overview. Let's go over some of the pros. The assembly was pretty easy, especially for such a large device. Pretty much assembled like the other Anycubic printers I've looked at, except for it had those 2 tie rods. Obviously a very large print volume, and again, this printer review was at the perfect time because I actually had 2 projects that absolutely required a very large printer, and I wouldn't have been able to do without this very large printer. So yeah, if you're printing large stuff, you could do it in pieces on a smaller machine, but something like this obviously makes it better. And yeah, this is more money than the smaller Anycubic printers, but it's still not as expensive as some of the other large printers I've seen. So I think it's a pretty good mid-range point for cost. Then it has mesh leveling for the Z homing, especially with a large bed like this. You know, see, if you just get one Z reference, like in the middle of the bed, you can't necessarily know that all the corners of the bed will be the same level. And, you know, physically they really can't be, you know, because it's not like in Rick and Morty where he made that perfectly flat section of his garage. So the mesh leveling, you know, creates the map in firmware so it knows where the deviations in level are, you know, basically the difference between the build platform versus the print axes. And for cons, I still felt the print speed could be faster. Now, I think a lot of this is perception because I'm printing larger things, which means it takes more time. But even then, when I printed small things on it, it seemed like it wasn't as fast as it could be. I know, I think the Anycubic printers are a little slower in general than some of the custom printers that I use. And of course, the custom printers that I have that go very fast often do not have as good a quality because of that. But I often trade quality for speed when I'm using my printers. But yeah, I would like to see the option to run it a little faster. And as I mentioned, I tried bumping it up to like 120, and I think there's a firmware limiter on it because I doubled the speed, but I didn't get half the print time. It was maybe like 25% faster. So I think there's some sort of firmware limiter on speed. High energy consumption. So again, if you just want to print small things, this isn't the printer for you because you're using a lot of electricity. You know, basically you're using a lot of electricity just to heat up that whole bed. And if you don't need the whole bed, it's not really the most efficient thing to do. And yeah, I know electricity is cheap, but you know, we're all about energy efficiency these days. So if you don't need something that large, maybe it's not the printer for you. And again, same thing with the large bed. I had to pay extra attention to adhesion. I have that small Anycubic Mega Pro, which had the same borosilicate bed. I never had any adhesion problems with that. With this larger bed, printing large parts, you have to be more careful with how you do the adhesion. And when I printed some of my later things, like those big rings, I actually did put a little bit of glue stick down just to make sure. And then I also printed with a brim to make sure that the large pieces didn't shake too much and come loose. So those were some challenges that I had to deal with using a large printer. So it's probably like, the name of the game with a large printer, but for me it was kind of seemed like a negative because I had to get used to it. And I think it's just, that's more you have to worry about with a large printer. All right, I had a lot of fun working with this very large printer. It came in at a very handy time, so I'd like to thank Anycubic for providing it for the review. And if you're in the market for a large printer, I believe this is about $600, so it might be a good choice for you as well. Just to finish off the review, here is a picture of what I am building. This isn't the completed item. There's no flowers put into it yet, but yes, this is basically a faux terracotta flower pot head a head appliance that fits onto an actor, and it's for a music video. And the skin of it is actually cardstock, like art cardstock, that can be removed to rapidly swap a paint-on face for the character. So we're probably going to have, I think, like 8 to 12 different faces that can go on it. And the lid at the top, that actually comes apart with magnets, so you can quickly swap the face skin. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this review. I've got another one coming in just a few more days, so we'll see you then.